My wife arranged a meeting with her ex at a bar to test my jealousy. I stayed calm. He spent an hour belittling me while she chuckled. Then she declared, "Hi, I'm Peter, 35 years old, data analyst from Louisville, Kentucky. I grew up without a father, watched my mom work 2 jobs just to keep us fed, and learned early that nobody was going to hand me anything in life. I put myself through community college, then state school, graduated with no debt because I worked nights at a warehouse, and built myself a stable, quiet life. I'm not rich, I'm not exciting, but I'm solid." I thought that mattered. I met Victoria at a friend's wedding 5 years ago. She was 28, worked in marketing, and had this energy that made everyone in the room turn their heads when she walked in. I still don't know what she saw in me that night, but we started dating, and 6 months later I proposed. The wedding was small, nothing fancy, just family and close friends at a venue outside town. For the first 2 years, things were good. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our weekend trips to Nashville or Cincinnati. But somewhere around year 3, something shifted. She started coming home later, said her company was expanding and she had more client meetings. She'd be on her phone constantly, smiling at texts she wouldn't show me, and when I'd ask who it was, she'd say it was just work or just Sarah from the office. I'm not a jealous guy by nature, but I'm not blind either. I noticed when she stopped touching me the way she used to, when she'd flinch if I reached for her hand, when intimacy became something she'd tolerate once a month if I was lucky. Then one night my brother Cole called me. Cole's a mechanic, lives about 40 minutes away, and we grab beers every few weeks. He told me he'd seen Victoria at that Italian place downtown, the one with the patio. I asked if maybe she was there for work, and he went quiet before explaining that she was holding hands with some guy across the table, and when he walked past, he saw them kiss. He sent me a photo he'd taken from his truck. It was blurry, but it was her. Dark hair, the blue dress I'd bought her for her birthday, and sitting across from her was a guy in a polo shirt, mid-30s, clean cut, smiling like he'd just won the lottery. I didn't call her that night. I didn't scream or throw things or demand answers. I saved the photo, thanked Cole, and sat in my home office until 3 in the morning thinking. The next day I acted normal. Made coffee, kissed her on the cheek, went to work, came home, asked about her day. She said it was fine, busy, exhausting. I nodded and made dinner. That weekend I did some digging. I checked our phone bill online and found a number she'd been texting constantly, sometimes 50 times a day. I ran it through a reverse lookup site and got a name, Brad Mitchell. I searched him on LinkedIn. Senior account manager at a mid-sized firm downtown, went to University of Louisville, played golf, posted photos of himself at charity events. I kept scrolling and found something interesting. He was engaged. His fiance's name was Nicole, and her last name was Brennan. I recognized that name. Her father, Richard Brennan, owned the company where Brad worked. So Brad wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was also engaged to his boss's daughter. I didn't confront Victoria. I watched. I noticed she started dressing nicer before work meetings. I saw charges on our joint credit card for restaurants I'd never been to, for drinks at bars in neighborhoods she claimed she never went to. One night she came home at 11, said the client dinner ran late, and I could smell cologne on her jacket. It wasn't mine. 2 weeks later, she came to me with an idea. She asked if I trusted her, said she'd been feeling like I'd been distant lately, and wanted to make sure we were solid. Then she suggested something bizarre. She proposed introducing me to an old friend of hers, someone she used to date, and we'd all grab drinks together just to see if I was the kind of guy who got jealous or if I was secure. I stared at her. This was the setup. This was her way of justifying what she'd already been doing, of flipping the script so that if I reacted, I'd be the bad guy. I agreed. She blinked. I don't think she expected me to agree. I told her it sounded fine, that if it would make her feel better about us, we should do it. She scheduled it for that Friday night. Downtown bar, 8 p.m. She said his name was Brad, that they dated briefly in college, that he was just an old friend. I said okay. That week I bought 2 things online, a pen camera and a small audio recorder that looked like a car key fob. I tested them both, made sure the quality was good, and practiced keeping them positioned right. I also called Cole and told him what was happening. He asked if I was really going through with this, and I told him I needed proof, and she was handing it to me. Friday came. I got home from work, showered, put on jeans and a button-down, clipped the pen to my pocket, and slipped the recorder into my jacket. Victoria was wearing a black dress, heels, red lipstick. She looked amazing, and I told her so. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We drove separately. She said she had to run an errand after, so it made more sense. I got to the bar first, ordered a beer, and waited. She walked in 10 minutes later, and right behind her was Brad. He looked exactly like his LinkedIn photo. Tall, confident, expensive watch, hair gelled back like he was auditioning for a cologne commercial. Victoria introduced us, and Brad shook my hand too hard, held it too long. We sat down. For the first 20 minutes, it was normal small talk. Work, sports, the weather. Then Brad started testing me. He'd make little comments about how being a data guy must be pretty boring, or asking if I was the type who liked everything planned out. I smiled and agreed, said I like structure. Victoria laughed, and I noticed she kept touching his arm when she talked. Then Brad got bolder. He mentioned that back in college, he and Victoria were pretty serious. She giggled and told him to stop, but she didn't mean it. He talked about their wild times, suggested I didn't know half the stuff she used to do. I sipped my beer and said I probably didn't. He leaned back and asked if I ever worried about what Victoria did when I wasn't around. I looked at him, then at her, and asked if I should. Victoria jumped in and told Brad not to be weird, but she was smiling. Brad said a woman like Victoria needed excitement, needed a guy who could keep up. I nodded and said I guess so. An hour in, Brad excused himself to the bathroom. While he was gone, Victoria leaned over and whispered that I was doing great, that I wasn't jealous at all. I said nope and finished my beer. When Brad came back, he sat down and looked at me like he was evaluating livestock. Then he asked what I would do if he told me he'd been sleeping with my wife. Victoria's face went pale. She told Brad what the hell, but he kept staring at me. I didn't flinch. I asked if that was true. He grinned and confirmed it, said it had been going on for like 3 months, and honestly, she was way out of my league. Victoria grabbed his arm and told him to shut up, that this wasn't funny, but he shook her off and said she wanted to test me. So here was the test. I stood up, pulled out my wallet, and put 2 20s on the table. I said that should cover my drinks. Victoria called after me to wait, but I was already walking toward the door. I heard her heels clicking behind me as she followed me into the parking lot, saying Brad was drunk and didn't mean it. I turned around and asked if she'd slept with him. She froze. Her mouth opened, then closed. I said that's what I thought and got in my car. She banged on the window, saying to please let her explain, but I started the engine and drove home. The whole time, the pen and the recorder were running. I got home around 10:30, walked straight into my office, and locked the door. I pulled out the pen camera and the audio recorder, plugged them into my laptop, and started downloading the files. My hands weren't shaking. I wasn't crying. I was calm, methodical, focused. Cole called me 20 minutes later, and I told him it went better than expected. He said he'd be there in 30. While I waited, I reviewed the footage. The video quality was decent, enough to see faces and body language clearly. The audio was even better. Every word Brad said, every laugh from Victoria, every smug comment about how I must be boring, how she needed excitement, how he'd been taking care of her while I worked late. And then the kicker, right there at the 1 hour and 12-minute mark. Brad saying he'd been sleeping with my wife, clear as day, with Victoria not denying it, just panicking because he'd said it out loud. Cole showed up with his laptop and a 6-pack of beer. He's not tech savvy, but he knows video editing software because he makes dumb car videos for YouTube. We spent the next 3 hours cutting together a highlight reel. 10 minutes long, time-stamped, subtitled, impossible to misinterpret. Every key moment, the hand-touching, the flirting, the insults, the confession. We saved it in 3 formats and uploaded it to a private cloud account. Then I wrote 2 emails. The first one was to Nicole Brennan, Brad's fiancée. I found her email through her Instagram page, which was public and full of photos of her and Brad at brunch spots and beach vacations. I kept it short, explained who I was, said I thought she deserved to know the truth about Brad, and attached the video. The second email was to Richard Brennan, owner of the company where Brad worked. I found his email on the company website. Same approach, explained the situation, mentioned Brad's engagement to his daughter, and attached the video evidence. I sent both emails at 2:47 a.m. Then I started packing Victoria's things. I didn't trash anything, didn't throw her clothes in the yard like some revenge movie. I just packed everything neatly into suitcases and boxes, labeled them, and stacked them by the front door. I changed the locks on the house. I called our bank and froze our joint account, then transferred my half into a new personal account. I changed every password we shared: Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, the Wi-Fi, everything. I called the security company we used for our alarm system and told them Victoria was no longer authorized to enter the property. By 6 a.m., I was done. I made coffee, sat on the couch, and waited. My phone started ringing at 7:15. It was Victoria. I didn't answer. She called again and again. By 8 a.m., I had 14 missed calls and 32 text messages, ranging from asking where I was to what the fuck did I do to please call back. I didn't respond to any of them. At 9 a.m., Brad called. I answered. He said we needed to talk, that I needed to take back that video and tell Nicole it was fake. I asked why I would do that. He explained that I'd just ruined his life, that Nicole broke up with him, her dad fired him that morning, and now everyone thought he was a piece of shit. I told him he was a piece of shit. He started yelling, calling me controlling, saying I had no right to interfere in his relationship, that what happened between him and Victoria was none of my business. I let him finish, then told him he'd said he was sleeping with my wife and I just showed people the truth, and hung up. Victoria called again at 10. This time I answered. She was crying, screaming, asking how I could do this to her, that I had no right to send that video to anyone. I said she was right. I should have just let her keep lying. She called me a psycho, said I was controlling and insecure and couldn't handle that she wanted something better. I asked if by better she meant Brad, the guy who just got fired and dumped because of her. She went quiet. Then she said I'd recorded them, that I'd set her up. I explained that no. She set herself up, that she invited me to that bar, let Brad say what he said, and didn't deny any of it. She said she wanted to come home. I told her things were packed and waiting outside the front door, that I'd changed the locks, and not to come back. She said I couldn't kick her out. It was her house too. I explained that actually, the house was in my name. I'd bought it before we got married, and told her to check the deed. She hung up. Over the next few days, the fallout was spectacular. Nicole posted a long Instagram story about betrayal and self-respect. Didn't name Brad directly, but everyone knew. Richard Brennan released a statement saying Brad was no longer employed due to conduct unbecoming of company values. Victoria tried calling me every day, sometimes 5 or 6 times. I never answered. She sent emails, long rambling messages about how I destroyed her, how she'd never forgive me, how I was a monster. I saved every single one. 2 weeks later, her lawyer contacted mine. She wanted spousal support, said she'd been financially dependent on me during the marriage. My lawyer sent back the video, the bank statements showing she'd spent thousands of our joint money on dates with Brad, and a timeline of her affair. Her lawyer stopped responding after that. A month later, the divorce was filed. No contest. She signed everything. 3 months after that night at the bar, the divorce was finalized. Victoria got nothing except her personal belongings and the car she'd driven, which was in her name. No alimony, no split of assets, nothing. My lawyer said it was one of the cleanest divorces he'd ever handled, and it was all because of the evidence. Video, audio, bank statements showing her spending our money on another man. Text messages she'd sent to friends bragging about having her cake and eating it too. The judge didn't even blink. Victoria tried fighting it at first. She hired a different lawyer, a guy who specialized in wronged spouses. But when my lawyer showed him the footage of Brad's confession, he told her she had no case. She claimed I'd entrapped her, that the recording was illegal, but Kentucky's a one-party consent state, meaning I didn't need her permission to record a conversation I was part of. She tried saying I was controlling and abusive, but there was no evidence of that. No police reports, no hospital visits, no witnesses. Just her word against a 10-minute video of her laughing while her lover insulted her husband. Brad's life imploded too. Losing his job was just the start. Word spread fast in Louisville's business community, especially because Richard Brennan had influence. Nobody wanted to hire the guy who'd cheated on the boss's daughter. Last I heard from Cole, who ran into one of Brad's old co-workers at a gym, Brad had moved back in with his parents in Indiana and was working at a car dealership. Nicole, from what I could see on social media before I stopped checking, seemed to be doing fine. She'd gone on a trip to Europe with friends, posted photos of herself looking happy and free, and eventually made her Instagram private. Good for her. Victoria spiraled. I didn't take joy in it, but I didn't feel guilty either. She'd moved into a small apartment on the east side of town, the kind of place with thin walls and a parking lot full of potholes. She'd lost her job too, not because of the affair directly, but because she'd been using company time and resources to meet up with Brad, and someone had reported it to HR after the story got out. She tried reaching out to mutual friends, but most of them had seen the video by then. A few stayed neutral, said they didn't want to pick sides, but the majority quietly distanced themselves. I didn't badmouth her to anyone. I didn't have to. The truth did all the work. For months post-divorce, I started seeing someone new. Her name was Rachel. She was a nurse at the hospital downtown, and we'd met at a coffee shop near my office. She was kind, funny, and had no idea who I was or what I'd been through until our third date. when I told her the whole story. She listened, didn't judge, and said it sounded like I'd handled it the right way. I appreciated that. We took things slow, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Then, 6 months after the divorce, Victoria showed up at my door. I'd just gotten home from a weekend trip to Nashville with Rachel, and there she was, standing on my porch, looking like she'd aged 10 years. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had dark circles under her eyes. She asked if we could talk. I said no and started to close the door, but she put her hand up and asked for just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let her in. We stood in the living room. I didn't offer her a seat. She said she knew she didn't deserve this, but she needed to say she was sorry. I didn't respond. She continued, said she was stupid and selfish, and threw away the best thing she ever had. I said okay. She told me she missed me, missed us, and asked if there was any chance we could try again. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no nostalgia. Just nothing. I said no. She started crying. She begged, said she'd do anything, go to therapy, be better, prove it to me. I told her she didn't make a mistake. She made a choice. She chose to cheat, chose to lie, chose to humiliate me in front of a stranger just to test whether I'd react. And when I didn't react the way she wanted, she got caught. I explained that wasn't a mistake, that was who she was. She claimed she'd changed. I said I didn't care. She asked if I was seeing someone else. I said yes. Her face crumpled. She asked already, and I reminded her it had been 6 months, that I'd moved on, and she should too. She wiped her eyes and said she couldn't believe I was being this cold. I told her I wasn't being cold, I was being honest. She wanted excitement, wanted someone better, and she got Brad. I asked how that worked out for her. She didn't answer. She just turned around and walked out. I closed the door, locked it, and sat down on the couch. Rachel called me an hour later and asked how my day was. I said good, really good, and meant it. A year later, I'm still in Louisville, still working the same job, still living in the same house. Rachel moved in 3 months ago, and we're talking about getting a dog. I don't think about Victoria much anymore. Sometimes I'll see a car that looks like hers, or hear a song that reminds me of our wedding, and I'll feel a little pang of something, but it passes quickly. Cole still checks in on me every week, and we still grab beers and talk about nothing important. I ran into Brad's old boss, Richard Brennan, at a charity event downtown last month. He recognized me, came over, and shook my hand. He said he never got to thank me properly, that what I did showing him that video saved his daughter a lot of pain down the road. I told him I wasn't trying to save anyone, I was just being honest. He said honesty matters and walked away. I guess it does. Looking back, I don't regret how I handled things. I didn't yell, didn't beg, didn't make a scene. I just collected the evidence, showed the truth, and walked away. Some people think that's cold, that I should have fought for my marriage, but I don't see it that way. You can't fight for something that the other person already destroyed. Victoria made her choice, and I made mine. And my choice was to stop letting her control my life. I'm not a hero. I'm not a victim. I'm just a guy who decided he deserved better. And I got it. The end. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments. Drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life